Fasting is an extremely useful spiritual exercise. It proves today's human beings, accustomed to excessive food intake, that the body can easily do for quite some time, for example 2 weeks, without material food, and this without any reduction of his physical or mental performance. Fasting is a habit breaker. It can do much to change our outdated eating habits. The fasting person can feel firsthand how little food he really needs and how nonsensical was his former diet. Fasting is like meditation, a fruitful exercise to overcome the desires of the body, to submit the body under the rule of the spirit. The monastic rule of Saint Francis of Paola says, "When the body is fasting, the spirit is being purified, the mind uplifted, the flesh submitted to the spirit, and the heart humble and contrite. Then the evil desire does not find fertile soil any longer. The fire of desire is extinguished, and instead the light of chastity is ignited." It is a real relief when the true self, the soul, learns to let go of things and troubles it does not really need. A certain purification of the physical organism is necessary and helps the spiritual liberation. Fasting serves the purification of the body, which has an impact on mental health as well. The hygiene of the spirit presupposes the hygiene of the body. Fasting can be an experience to raise the spirit, to largely dissolve it from the body, and to sense greater closeness to the higher world. Already hunger leads to a feeling of lightness, accompanied by a high sensitivity. By fasting, the smell and taste nerves, but especially the inner spiritual senses, are sharpened, which allows an extended, more subtle perception. How can one think himself a disembodied spirit if any passing sensation of hunger is not conquered? Fasting can also serve the concentration, the connection to the higher will before acting or before taking an important decision. Especially in a time full of sensual temptations and unbridled consumption, fasting is an effective means of self-imposed penance. To deprive the body of food and luxury agents, even only temporary, is a renunciation which has a purifying effect. The consequences of a breach of the spiritual laws can be mitigated by penance and purification. Mahatma Gandhi had brought this aspect back to our attention, which was well known and widely practiced in the Middle Ages. So, the Bible says, "This kind goeth not out, but by prayer and fasting." Under no circumstances must fasting become a sport in which ascetic maximum performance is sought. The aim of the path is elevation. This cannot be reached by fasting alone. Is it possible that people believe they will attain the community of Shambhala through invasion or through fasting? A good exercise for the beginner is to renounce material food regularly, for example once a week for 36 hours. One night, one day, and another night. You will see that it is not hunger that is the problem, but appetite, the body's craving for pleasure. Even when fasting, it is not so much the physical abstention that is important, but to overcome the mental desire. Think not of food. He who fasts, but in his heart covets food, is of little merit. Spiritual fasting serves to retreat from the sensual overstimulation of the world, to look for inner rest, to exercise in frugality, to restrict oneself to the few things we really need. During these times, all earthly concerns should be put aside as far as possible. The spiritual faster is trying to come as close as possible to the ideal of a contemplative life. We shall keep strict spiritual fast in order that we may, in complete purity of body and spirit, welcome the eve of Easter, the resurrection of the Spirit. The goal of human development is increasing spiritualization. Even the physical body should become always finer, of ever higher vibration. This development we can promote if we accustom him to less and less material and increasingly spiritual food. If plants can feed on sunlight and the nutrients in the water, this should not, in principle, be impossible for human beings either. Anyone observing his body accurately notes that sun and fresh air are foodstuff too. Accordingly, physical exercises outdoors let hunger disappear. It has often been clearly stated that pure air provides far more essential nourishment than city air. People in the mountains can live longer without food and without needing sleep. The nourishment of spirit, or Agni, psychic energy, can satisfy them without the need of heavy foods. Studies should be made of the nourishment by prana on heights. A body well supplied with sun and fresh air requires less material food. 10 deep breaths in clean air provide you with quite a lot of energy. Prana is like food for the heart. Those who free themselves more and more from the burdensome conditions of the earth will manage with less food. This applies first physically, namely, for example, if you live in the mountains. At an altitude of 7,000 feet, man can decrease his intake of food. The mountains are important since they, like a principle, lead one out of the lower earthly conditions. On the heights, one feels that one has been freed from ordinary earthly demands. This is also true in a spiritual sense. You have already experienced, in a state of strained psychic energy, of high vibration, enthusiasm, prayer, meditation, joyful, focused, and self-forgetful work, man needs only little food. The more you raise your spiritual nature, the more you suffer indeed from a relapse into the old habit of overeating. Earthly food can be reduced to small portions. The body will not require more when Agni is aflame. So it is good to establish such a state of high vibration before eating, whereby the physical needs are reduced. In this way, you can replace, to a considerable extent, physical by spiritual food. Psychic energy will itself whisper to the sensitive ear when less sleep is needed, when less food is needed, and when less drink is needed. Indeed, each kind of energy provides nourishment, psychic energy especially. The natural growth of psychic energy can replace the resources of the body. Of course, we are not yet ready today to feed on light and air. The path thereto leads through gradual spiritualization. This refers not only to the soul, but also to the organism. The finer, the higher the vibration of our body is, the less material food will it need. Not only the body, but also the immortal soul must be nurtured. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. The heart demands constant nourishment. Without it, the heart is deprived of the higher connection and begins to decompose. Most people neglect the nourishment of the soul. The people of the world are starving for want of spiritual sustenance. Fellow citizens, you are not wise. You pay gold for rotten food, but are too stingy to pay even a copper coin for the nourishment of your soul. However, the provision of our true eternal being with food is much more important than that of the body, who passes away soon anyway. Daily we partake of food, and without it regard the day as miserable. But our spirit also requires nourishment of thought, and it is a crime to pass one's day without it. Let us think of the fundamentals of yoga as our bread and milk. Just as to fixed meal times, we therefore should get used to regular times of meditation, where in particular our true eternal individuality is nurtured. The fact that the soul of man requires nourishment no less than the body, and also requires it at stated intervals of time and in sufficient quantities, is not always recognized or accepted. Consequently, in the majority of cases, that nourishment is very inadequately and intermittently supplied, and the result of such neglect is to a close observer evident in the faces and forms of the people he meets. Spiritual nourishment, as we shall discuss more fully in the broadcasting about meditation, consists of high thoughts, feelings, and ideals, of prayers, of the absorbing of higher energies, of the words from God's mouth, as they are laid down in the holy scriptures of mankind. There is good reason for my repeating about solemnity, for it is nourishment for the heart.